All right, so this is New York real estate investing. This is a crazy real estate stories part two. Greg and Michael here. Mike, we got a lot of good feedback from part one. I actually listened to it myself after the fact, and I thought it was pretty good. I was like, this is a good show. So a lot of the lessons we were talking about, we had some good stories to kind of go in there and weave in. So it actually was applicable. We weren't just stand-up comedians. So with that being said, I started last time, so I want you to start this time. And the point of this show is just to talk about really what can happen in this business, good and bad. And hopefully you can hear these stories and get entertained, educated, and you can be a little bit more aware of what goes on in the reality of this business.
Okay, so crazy story. So I have a crazy story. I had a property in Roosevelt from a seller that like every single real estate investor has spoken to. The guy's on everybody's list. He owns a lot of rental properties, and some of them are net, some of them are vacant. He's on every single box gets checked off for this guy. And I had spoken to him. He had mentioned this property, and then I couldn't lock it up. And then one of my students got it locked up for a price. And the story with this is it's an illegal two-family, and it's got two sets of squatters, squatter upstairs and a squatter downstairs, both of whom have never paid the guy rent. And he wants to sell it. So we came up with a price, and I thought that it was a decent price. And I put it out to my list as occupied, and I got crickets. Nobody wanted it. So then I said, you know what? Let me try. First of all, let me see if I can get him down a little bit. I got him down a little bit. I got the seller down a little bit, and then I did not have it under contract. We had just agreed on a number, and I went to the property, and I knew one of them was like the instigator. One of them was like the guy who really moved in and took over, and the other one was renting from him until she realized she wasn't.
Yeah.
And I started negotiating, and I came up, I think it was $6,000 or $8,000 each, and they said okay. And then I put the property out to my list as vacant, and I got really good numbers. So like I was able to wholesale it for like $60,000 or $70,000, and that was and I think that was before I paid them the $12,000 or $18,000 or the $16,000 I paid them. But I had to. One of the guys said I need some money now, so I had to give him some money to start when I didn't even have the property under contract. So I knew there was a risk, right? Because in theory, if the seller figured out that this place was getting vacant, he would never have given me the number he gave me. But I knew the seller really wasn't going anywhere. He's old. And I took a huge risk, but it worked out perfectly. I paid them when they left, and next day we closed on the wholesale, and it was a great deal. But it was a little bit crazy because I was dealing with some crazy people. Oh, and then the woman came back and said to me, well, you should pay me more because I have kids and this guy doesn't have kids. And I'm like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. I'm not, the negotiation process that goes through their mind is crazy. And I think on some level I could have gotten her property empty without paying her. I don't even know. But in the end, I knew I had to deliver a vacant, and I basically gave people money before I even had the property on the contract. So that was a little nuts. But it worked out. Thank God it worked out.
What'd you walk away with after the deal?
I think it ended up being a $50,000 or $60,000 wholesale deal, and I had to split it with my student who actually had the deal.
I feel like every deal you do is like 50 or 60 grand when you're wholesaling. You guys make serious money in that.
I think we're averaging our average wholesale deal is creeping up towards $40,000. So that's good.
That's amazing. Was that the one you called me about when I was in San Diego? You were like, hey, I got this fucking crazy seller, and like I remember you it was a property with something like that, and you just needed some advice, and I was like, oh yeah, say this to the seller.
Yeah. You helped me with that. It helped. It definitely helped.
Did it? You're welcome. Anyway. Interesting. So what's the biggest, I mean, obviously you reiterate a lot of points. What's the biggest lesson if you had to take one away from this? Just kind of roll the dice sometimes, or what?
My lesson is, you got to make business decisions and risk money that you can afford to lose. So like, I think what I put out was $3,000 or $4,000. It was to get the guy to sign a document saying he was going to leave. The other tenant was okay taking it all when she left. So I had some risk, right? I could have lost $3,000, $4,000, but to risk $3,000 or $4,000 to potentially make, a total of 60 grand, it's a no-brainer to me. People said I was crazy when I told them that. I'm like, but I'm willing to take that risk. Like that is a possibility that I'm going to give this guy the money. The seller's going to realize that everybody's leaving and not sign the contract. Yes. But in the end, the contract got signed and it all worked out. So I think the takeaway is that sometimes you gotta risk it for the biscuit.
100%. 100%. You got to risk it. That's funny. I just had a similar scenario happen with this. I wish I could say his name. I would love to say his name, but I just don't want to be that guy. This absolute peckerhead in Kingston. He, man, he like, I don't even get, I could say some bad stuff, but he basically jerked my chain for like a month. And he was like calling me out. Yeah, buyer. Calling me out because I got a little, I didn't yell at him, but I was like, dude, I'll be honest with you. You're being a total like pansy. I'm like, you got to literally like put your fucking big boy pants on. And he got pissed. And then he was,
what wasn't he doing? He wasn't signing.
I'll tell you what happened. And he won. I doubt he's listening. If he is, he can go fuck himself, quite frankly. But I'm serious. I don't give a fuck. So I had the same thing. I locked down a deal. We actually had this thing locked down though. This was not bullshit. Locked down a deal. And I was like, I don't know if this is a good deal or not. So I had somehow I got a 10-day inspection in there. I've been doing that recently. The attorney has to be blind to accept that, but this attorney, I guess, couldn't see that day. So anyway, so we had this 10-day period and it was, I put it out for like 15 grand. It wasn't like a home run. And I'm like, fuck it. I can't go broke making a profit. It was from texting. So like it cost us whatever.
Right.
And no one really wanted it because there was tenants inside as usual. So this guy comes along and he called me actually. He called me in general. And I'm like, and it was a referral from somebody else. And I'm like, you know, and he's like this like in person, like I like meeting people in person. I'm like, dude, I'm in fucking California. Like, what the fuck do you want me to do? Like,
want to fly over here, feel free.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm not letting you come to my house either way. You probably smell. But anyway, so he wants this deal now. And I'm like, okay. He lives in the city. And I'm like, listen, dude, you should go see the house before you like, let me know you want to buy it. Then he's like, no, I don't need to see it. I'm like, listen, that's fine. Totally cool. You're going to go off these 5 pictures I have. That's fine. But just, I don't want this to get bullshit. I'm just being honest with you. You know, I'm giving him the upfront agreement. No, it's all good. It's all good. So we had to like make a change in the contract and it took forever, like literally forever, because the seller's attorney was like a dinosaur. And then my attorney did a great job, but like there's only so much they can do, quite frankly, right? You can't control somebody else at the end of the day. If anyone knows how to do that, let me know. I'll buy your course. But so this is dragging on for like a week. And I keep telling the buyer, I'm like, listen, dude, I gave you my word. I'm going to sell you the house. I'm not going to dick around. I'm not going to sell to anybody else.
Buyer's dragging around now, or the
seller's attorney's taking forever to draft this change in the contract because we had the terms changed. And he was like, I was like, listen, this might take a couple of weeks. The guy's on vacation. I'm like, just go roll with me here, dude. Roll. This is, by the way, this was last week. So this is like a recent story. So I'm like, listen, dude, you have my word. I'm selling you the house. I know we have a handshake deal now, but just be patient. It's going to be all good. Everything in the contract is going to make sense for you. So when I sign it, there's going to be no bullshit. He's like, awesome. I can't wait to buy it. This is so great. And I'm like, good for you. Wait to sign it. And then, you know, smile after. So he keeps hitting me up and he's like, hey, where's the contract? Where's the contract? I'm like, dude, I told you it's going to take a couple of weeks. The guy's on vacation. Shut up. Like, I didn't say that, but I'm like, and then he starts hitting me up. Yeah. So he starts like bombarding me. And I'm like, listen, dude, it's like Thursday. No, it was Friday. And I'm like, listen, this guy is on effing vacation. Like, chill the hell out. Like, I'm going to sell you the house. I'm not going to like screw you over, dude. Trust me. And I'm like, are you going to buy the house? He's like, oh, I want the house so bad. And I'm like, all right.
Don't tell me that they made the change in the contract and then the guy changed his mind.
Get this. It gets better. We're just getting warmed up here. So now I'm like, dude, I'm like, if you want, and then he got pissed at me. I'm like, if you want, by the way, this is not binding, nor am I an attorney anyway. We can sign a Word document that says Greg's intending to sell and you're intending to buy. There's no legal obligation. I can type that up right now and email it to you. He's like, oh, I don't do that anything without my attorney's approval. And he starts saying this bullshit. Right, and I'm like, okay, this guy is starting to piss me off. So then the next week rolls around. This is last week. And he's like, hey, man, I got some other properties I'm thinking about. I'm like, listen, dude, we're going to get the contract this week. Just wait. So
one at a time.
Yeah, one at a time. I'm like, you know, hold your horses. So he starts getting flaky. And I'm like, listen, I just spoke to the attorney. They're getting it done right now. We're going to get it over to you. And then he starts saying some stupid shit. And then he's like, by the way, I need in the contract that it states that the tenants are going to be out. And I'm like, hey, hedge fund manager genius, like no shit. That's why we fucking been waiting for 2 weeks. You ding-a-ling. And I'm getting pissed because he's starting to say, and then he's like, by the way, there needs to be a specific date that the tenants are at. It's got to be a specific date, or else my attorney. I'm like,
Were you
dude,
selling it you were selling it to Occupied, correct?
vacant.
Oh, vacant. Okay.
So in the contract, I actually got the contract and I looked at it and my attorney sent it over. It says it's so black and white, you can't see anything else. It's like, this property will be delivered vacant or else the buyer will not close. And it's like closing date 40 days after contract is signed, contract date, whatever, April, whatever. So he starts saying some stupid shit now. Now he's like, my attorney, he's probably not going to want me to sign this now. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm like, bud, this thing says vacant, you dummy. And he's like, I don't know. I don't like the way you do business. And then he starts calling me out. And I'm like, listen, I said, I don't know how many houses you have. Quite frankly, if you had 200, I don't give two shits. I said, you sound like a total amateur and I'm pissed at you. I said, you are the biggest flake I've ever seen in my life. I said, are you freaking crazy? And I'm talking, I should have done this. I was talking to him like a dog. I should not have done that. Not professional. I'll own that 100%. But I'm pissed now. It's like 5 o'clock out here. I'm tired. So then we start getting in an argument. Now we're going at each other now. We're butting heads. And I'm like, dude, listen, dude, you are the biggest clown.
And he hasn't signed anything, right?
No. And I was working so he flakes out. And I'm like, listen, dude, like, I can't believe this. Like this. I'm like, you can do whatever you want. Quite frankly, I don't care. But you are an absolute clown. I'm deleting you from Active Campaign as we speak. And don't ever bother me again. Like, and I'm not gonna like send an email saying you're a flake, but if someone asks me, you best bet know what I'm saying. I'm just gonna be honest with them. I'm not gonna say you're a bad person because you're probably not.
What did he say?
He's like, oh, I get it. You know, and he was just saying all this stuff that didn't make any sense. And I'm like, listen, dude, like, I hope you have a good weekend. Like, I'm not taking this personally, but like, just don't bother me again. So the point of the story is if you're a new wholesaler or a new investor and you're doing a deal with buyers you don't know with, you got to vet them. And some of these buyers, not all of them, I mean, this doesn't happen that often. Some of these buyers are going to be total, like they're so reliant on their attorney and they have no flexibility at all. They're going to kill some deals like on the wholesale side. And it's just going to be inevitable. Like you're going to get disappointed sometimes. Fortunately, like I'm numb to this at this point.
I had a very, very similar situation happen on a deal that closed last week where also the guy.
What happened? I want to hear it because it's
amateur,
like, dude.
An amateur buyer. I felt like he was an amateur. He was asking for things that don't make sense.
Yeah, that's what happens.
And then he flaked out at the last minute. So the guy what?
Did he sign an assignment?
He signed, but we sort of screwed up. My attorney screwed up something on the assignment, so I couldn't keep his deposit. It's fine. He thought, whatever. That's a longer story that I don't want to get into. But then his lender told me, oh, I have somebody who wants it right away. So I called this guy. He's all hot to try for the property, but his attorney won't sign an assignment. His attorney's like, it's too punitive. We'll just go to closing. So I'm like, okay, let's go to closing next week. And then nothing happens. They won't close. I had somebody else who bought it. It was like $5,000 less, so big deal. But some of these attorneys are just impossible, and
they're impossible.
Working with a buyer who you don't know, who doesn't really know what you're doing, and you got that vibe off the guy doesn't know what he's doing. If a guy doesn't know what he's doing, then if his attorney tells him, "Hey, there's a risk here," which every attorney will tell every amateur there's a risk because there is a risk.
There is a risk,
and it's a nightmare dealing with people that are afraid. That's the problem.
100%, and it's like I think one of my weaknesses is if I get frustrated with somebody and if I know them, I'm going to be cool. But if I don't know them and I don't have a relationship with them, I tend to be a little kind of sharky, not like a used car salesman sharky, but I'm just like,
well, I'm saying we both have points where people push us past it. We say things that we shouldn't. I think everybody has that. I wish I had better control of my emotions, but when something happens to me, we get upset and then we say stupid things. That's just how it works.
We get pissed. Yeah. And and I apologized to him after. I actually called him up and I said, listen, man, I know we got in a powwow there and obviously I'm not happy about this. I'm sure you're not either. I shouldn't have talked to you like I talked to you. And I apologize for that, but I do want to know, like, this is something I don't tolerate. And I know I sounded
what happened with the deal in the end?
So I just put it out on Monday. We got like 5 people interested again. So hopefully we sell it this week. That's on my list after this podcast is over. But if you're a new investor, you got to understand when you're dealing with buyers who you don't have a relationship with, and if they're really, this is the truth, and this happens in California, like it's like a godsend. But in California, like it's so fucking hard to get a deal out here when you have a buyer who is like, going to overpay or whatever, or not overpay, or if they're going to offer you the number that you wanted or more. Usually everyone in California, for the most part, and it's kind of ironic because usually New York's more of a no bullshit place. People in San Diego are nuts to get deals. So like you have so much more control over it. In New York, it's such a slow process.
Right. So many more things can go wrong.
Yeah, there's so much more bullshit.
How long does a quick wholesale deal take you in California?
So is there title issues?
Let's say it's clean.
7 days.
Right.
You can do that in Pennsylvania too. You can get title back.
In the United States, you can do it. In New York, you know what a quick wholesale deal is for me? It's probably 2 months.
That's generous, honestly. That's generous. It depends on the municipality. Yeah, but it's about 2 months, sometimes 3 months.
But sometimes you need to get some kind of searches from that place, and they'll give it to you. The whole thing is so weird.
My record's 30 days. My record purchase, this is not assignment, but we've done wholesale deals fast, like 30 days, but that's like not normal. I've bought property, like taken down, closed, funded in 30, but that's like 30 days is pushing it.
Yeah, if we have the funds to do it, it's a quicker process. But when you're stuck in the middle, it's a problem. If you have a buyer who's going to jerk you around because you're representing things to the seller, and the buyer, you think the buyer is going to do, and then the buyer doesn't. The deal that I closed closed on April 2nd. It was supposed to close in March, and the guy was pissed off, and it was because the buyers were jerking me around. So it happens. But yeah, if we can close the deal, we can close the deal much quicker. But when you got to deal with, when you're in the middle, it gets messy sometimes.
Normally, what happens, I'll tell you why it normally takes a little bit longer. Well, you know this, but it's never the title, it's the municipal stuff. That's what happens because these towns are so stupid. It's like you got to get the fire
for sure. You take all kinds of stupid things, the housing and building search and the tax cert and all that stupidity. That could take time, but sometimes it's just the seller's attorney or the buyer's attorney that's jerking you around over the documentation.
That's what will. I found a new title company, Green Acre. Shout out to Green Acre, Derek. You're the man. They can get title, not municipals, back in like 8 to 12 days.
So you're not using Hillendale anymore?
We split them up, but I'm leaning more towards Green Acre. Here's another nugget that they don't talk about on the seminar stage. Hence why people are listening. All right, this is real facts. And this is not relevant to a crazy story, but we're just going to go anywhere we can go on this podcast. This is how you get people pissed off, not buyers and sellers. This is real. This happened on the deal we did in Newburgh, by the way. So when you lock a deal up, your attorney is going to order title from whoever. And then this is a real problem that has happened. If the end buyer, if you're signing it or doing a double close, because that happens a lot too, if the end buyer's attorney is adamant on not using your title company, you cause a stir in the whole process, and it takes 3 to 4 weeks longer than it should. Because
it can take longer. The main reason that I want to go to a buyer that's going to use my title, people don't really understand this. On some level, I want to use a title company that I know who maybe can, if it's a gray area, they can help me. But the main reason is because it's such a good excuse to not close, right? You can just always say title isn't in, municipals aren't in. If you have it and you're in control, then that you take away a big chunk of the excuse, right? The other good excuse is, oh, my attorney's away on vacation, all that bullshit that you just said. Like, I've used that excuse, but if you can get the title and know that the title's there, it takes away some of the wiggle room that the buyer has from jerking you around. So I'm a big fan of that, and I would probably assign a deal if it wasn't a big dollar amount difference to somebody who's paying me a little less if they agreed to use my title than somebody who's paying me a little more if they weren't using the title, just for the reasons that we said. It's a big deal that if a buyer agrees to use your title, and it's always some jerk off attorney that some buyer picks who says, oh no, I need to be in control of the title. It is the stupidest bullshit I've ever heard. And we hear it all the time, right? Oh, we need to order the title. How do we know it's every title's the same shit everywhere. It's so stupid, you know. I'm always amazed that a buyer uses an attorney who says that. And sometimes I use Google Forms to submit bids for people to submit bids. And one of the questions asks is, can you use our title? And when somebody says no, sometimes I'll call them and go, why can't you use your title? My attorney has to order a title. I'm like, I'm just telling you that puts you at a disadvantage whether you're going to get the deal or not.
And you know what it does? It makes you vulnerable as a wholesaler because the seller is in like your attorney. This is why New York wholesaling is like no other place. It's your attorney and the seller's attorney are in basically one agreement. And then their attorney is aware that you're using XYZ title. And then when you throw this wrench into the pot, all of a sudden the seller's attorney has no effing clue what's going on. They're like, wait a minute, what? We ordered.
Yeah, that happened once on a deal where there were title issues, and we cleared all the title issues. It took a long time with my title company, and then I assigned it to some guy who wouldn't use my title company, and the seller's attorney went bananas. He's like, I spent hours and hours clearing this shit. Now I got to clear it with somebody else.
Yeah,
it was a big deal, and my attorney got pissed off at me. Yeah, and I'm like, nothing I could do. I wish I could have assigned somebody, but the only guy that was going to take it was a guy who needed to order title. But it's always a nightmare when that happens.
And then you have to cancel with the one title company, and you got to pay them a fee sometimes. And I get it.
My title company doesn't charge me a fee, but it's not a fee thing. It's like, and also they come like this was complicated, so they might have different things to clear. So the seller's attorney's like, I already provided you with X, Y, and Z. Now you're asking me for A, B, and C. It's a big problem. So it's something you should always push when you're wholesaling, that the buyer uses your title always.
You know what's interesting about that? Like the buyer for some reason thinks, and this is like the psychology of buyers, they think that if they want you to use your title, they think there's something shady going on, even though there's never something shady because you can't close if there's something shady going on, especially in New York. It's so slow. You'd find
sometimes it's an attorney who will come up with that. Most buyers, I don't think, really care.
That's like, yeah, the attorney. That's
title is sort of like something we have to get over. But some attorney had to experience one, 27 years ago where they used some other title company and something came back to bite them in the ass. So they didn't pay the water and we had to pay the extra water fee. Like something stupid, like some ancient fossilized asshole attorney comes up with that idea and then decides I'm never closing a deal unless I order the title. And also some of these guys have relationships and they want Knicks tickets and they want to go to they want to sit at the Legends box seats at Yankee Stadium, and the title company provides them. And anytime they can order title, it makes them look better. And it's as a wholesaler, you have to it should be like a dollar amount that you can put on it. It's relatively significant of how much less you will take to go for a buyer that will use your title as opposed to a buyer that won't.
100%. And a repeat buyer. I do put value on that if it's close on the price. Like,
right.
It really comes down to like, okay, if I know this person's good on what they say they're going to do, like I value leaving $5,000 on the table versus like some other schmuck who's going to get his an attorney with
devil, better than the devil,
Totally. All right, Mike, we got time for one more story and then we both got to run. What other story you got for us?
I got a story. I had a deal. It was a short sale, right? Like a layup short sale. And
explain the short sale for people who don't know what that is.
The situation where the money, the mortgage that was owed was more than the value of the house, and the lender agreed to take a short payoff if they sell the property.
Sure.
And it looked to me like it was a $50,000 or $60,000 deal, but I had to get it vacant. There was one kid in there. I don't know if he's 100%, and I kept going there and telling him, I'm going to give you money to get out of here. And then, very strange, the lender called the short sale negotiator that I use on a Wednesday and said, if you don't close on this Friday, the deal is dead.
Interesting.
I think they had to get it off their books. I don't know what was going on. And gave me 2 days to close. And I now had a big problem because I screwed up this one a little bit. So I scramble and I find a buyer who will pay me, I don't know, like $25,000. But I have to be on the hook to get the tenant out. I wasn't clear about that. I wanted to tell them that they will pay the tenant, but I'll negotiate with the tenant. But I wasn't clear, and I was desperate because I was scrambling, and I didn't effectively communicate what I wanted, and basically they understood, which made sense that I was going to pay them off. So we close, and the money's held in escrow, so I don't even get paid. And I go to the site and I finally get in touch with like this kid's mother and his stepfather. And I'm like, got to get out of here, like right away. Right. And I think they said how much. I think I paid him like $4,000. And I'm like, you got to leave. This is it. This is your last and only chance. And they left. And the buyers bought it and they took it. So I ended up making probably around 20 grand on it. But it was like, when I got the call, I almost didn't believe it. They said, you have to close by Friday. I'm like, this Friday? They're like, yeah. I go, that's in 2 days. They said, yeah. And I got it done. I made some money on it. So in the end, I was a little, and this is stupid, I was like nauseous that I thought there was more money in there. But when the lender gives you that deadline, you don't have a choice. So at least I made chicken salad out of chicken shit.
There you go. That's funny. Did you, was it a squatter or who was in the property?
Squatters for years.
Like legitimate squatters?
Legitimate squatters. They moved in right when the pandemic started, and the seller went to the cops, and they whipped out a lease, and the cops said there's nothing we could do.
Oh man, that is brutal.
Why I bought it at a huge discount.
Where was the property?
Amityville.
Did you close that this year? Was that a recent one?
Yeah, it closed. No, it closed last year, but it the hell was it? It closed last year, but towards the end of the year.
Did what was I going to say? Did you assign the LLC? How did you do that? You created a new LLC and then you sold the LLC.
Created an LLC that the bank agreed to sell into, and sold the interest in the LLC to the
interest in the LLC. So you basically, and then it happened at the closing. Basically, the closing is when the LLC. So it's the same shit, just a different form of paperwork, basically.
Yeah,
interesting.
I mean, yeah, it's a way to wholesale a short sale.
I call that the Michael Pinter special. You're the expert when it comes to that. You know, it's
my idea. I think it was my attorney's idea because he does those kinds of things all the time.
The thing with that is the short sales I've noticed. I haven't done too many of them, but I talked about on the first episode we did with this kind of topic. It's like some of these lenders, I don't know what their algorithm says to them, but they'll just dump these properties. And to me, I'm like, it doesn't make any sense, but I don't really care. I don't ask questions. I just do what I say I'm going to do.
There's no way to figure it out. That's the problem with short sales. You don't really know what you're ever going to be able to buy it at. I had a deal where I think the lender agreed to X, and now the lender just came back before they gave an approval, but they didn't sign the contract, and then they said, no, we want $50,000 more. I'm like, I don't know if the deal works at that. I had a deal that I thought was a layup, and now I don't know if it's going to even work at all. Short sales are a real pain in the ass. I mean, they work sometimes, but every time I go into contract on a short sale, I generally assume it's never going to close. If it does close, it's just a bonus.
Do you one more question on that, because people probably have a few of them, is when you do the short sale, do you have that short sale agent put it on the MLS for like 10 minutes, or is that you just bypass that?
So here's a little nugget for people who don't know. There's another MLS called the New York State MLS, which basically, if something's listed on it, it's a short sale that nobody wants, that the buyer doesn't want anybody to see. So you put it on New York State MLS, no one sees it. The bank sees that it's listed, doesn't know there's a difference, and that's how it works.
Interesting.
Yeah,
they don't tell you that at the seminars.
Not the real MLS. It's like a bullshit MLS. Sometimes I'll see a property, and if it shows up there, I'm like, I know this is short sale. I know the only reason anybody would ever list it is because it's a short sale.
And it has to be listed for like a week or something, right?
Oh, some of them want it a day. Some of them want it like the day that it's submitted. Everybody's got their own rules, but every servicer is different. Also, some don't even need it. Most do.
Yeah, interesting. That's interesting stuff. We could talk for hours about this stuff. We want to definitely wind it down now. I mean, or else this is a 4-hour podcast. So, big takeaways for the listeners. Number one, you're going to see crazy stuff if you're doing deals. You're going to just run into, and the thing is this. The better you get at solving problems, the more money you're going to make. I know we've said that before in the show, but at the end of the day, these crazy stories that we mentioned with buyers and sellers and lenders and all that kind of stuff, title companies, this is inevitable if you're going to, especially in our market, when you're going to be, messing around with attorneys, like you're just going to run into this. So it is going to be normal. You're not the only one dealing with this bullshit. This happens to everybody. And once you do it, you understand how it works. And then the next time you do it, it's a lot easier, or you're not going to be surprised. Like when you have a buyer's attorney, like just be adamant on using the title company, That's normal, right? So you don't have to be like, oh, why does this keep happening? It's like, yo, that is normal. That's like the rain is going to come when it gets cloudy, right? So just understand that. And if you do have a deal that you don't understand or you need help with, if it's in the Hudson Valley, hit me up. If it's in Long Island, hit Michael up. Hope everyone enjoys the show. Please, if you do,
Also, I've been doing a lot. I've been doing the 5 boroughs lately. I'm in Brooklyn. I'm doing it.
You're like Queens and shit.
Queens and Brooklyn. I've been doing deals there. So I'm Staten Island leaving. So if you have any deals in the 5 boroughs, I'm happy to talk to you about those.
Are you seeing New York City a little bit harder to deal with title wise, or is it the same shit? Like with municipals, because it's a city.
No, it's easier. The municipals are easier.
Is it faster?
Yeah.
Really?
Usually it is. It's easier to get information from the 5 boroughs than it is from the town. It depends where, right? There are some villages where you can get the municipals in a day. Yeah. And then there are some towns where it takes 4 weeks. So it depends. But the 5 boroughs, I think, are pretty easy to get information.
Interesting. Have you seen, is there any differences with the logistics, or is it the same thing? Just same thing, just different area?
It's really the same thing.
Look at that. So if you're in New York City, what about Manhattan? Is that still, or is that not really?
I haven't gotten a deal there, but I would, but I'm just seeing a lot more Brooklyn, Queens. I usually stay away from it, but lately the deals have been coming in, so I'm taking them.
Do you close, or you just do assignments over there?
Depends on the situation. I'm assigning something in Brooklyn now. I may close on something in Brooklyn, although the guy just said no to my offer, but I don't know.
Look at that. So if you're in New York City, hit up Mike Pinter and take you to a Met game after. Everyone, enjoy the show. Like I said, if you are like the show, subscribe on YouTube, like it on YouTube. We're getting more views on YouTube. Follow the podcast, put it on social media. That's how we leave a review, obviously, on iTunes. If you're listening to this, that's how we grow the show. And we'll see everybody on the next episode.